Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is James. I'm the creator of the Raven of the Scythe fantasy role-playing game, and in this video I would like to speak to you just a little bit about magic, specifically Abjuration Magic. So in Raven of the Scythe there are 6 schools of magic that spellcasting characters can choose to practice and specialize in. Abjuration being just one of those 6. And every school of magic has its own strengths and limitations. Abjuration magic being no different, its strengths lie in its defensive capabilities. This is the school of protection and of healing. The limitations of Abjuration magic is that it really doesn't offer much of anything in the way of offensive power. So you would specialize in Abjuration magic if you wanted to protect the other members of your party and keep them in the fight through healing and stuff like that. Abjuration is... what would be the best way to say this? It lends itself very, very well to being a school for support characters. So, probably the most iconic spells of the Abjuration School of Magic would be Arcane Armor, which creates magical armor that protects the caster themselves. Elemental Ward, which begins a trend in Abjuration where they can defend against elemental damage like fire and ice and lightning, and then Healing Touch, which is the first of the healing spells that you have access to. And there's a few other more esoteric kind of things that you can do with Abjuration, like you can remove status effects, you can pacify enemies so that they can't attack, but protecting yourself and protection from elements and healing are really the bread and butter of Abjuration magic. If I were going to try to codify the relationship between the schools of magic, I would say that Abjuration magic is very strongly opposed to the school of evocation, which is the blasty type of magic, because Abjuration just offers so many different ways to shut that type of damage down. Abjuration is really, really good, like it absolutely shines in a situation where you're going up against another spellcaster or a creature that relies on elemental damage of some type to do harm to the party members. Now, all that being said, Abjuration can be extraordinarily limiting. Like I said, it doesn't have really any offensive capabilities, and for a lot of players that can be a real bummer because not everyone wants to be in the support role. So because of that, I think Abjuration, while it's a really, really good school, it's solid, and in a lot of ways it's essential if you want to have access to magical healing, I think that it does really, really well as a school if you want to maybe dabble in magic but not devote yourself fully to it. Or maybe you want to take Abjuration as a secondary school in addition to a primary school that you're more focused on. Like maybe you're a really good illusionist, but you also know a handful of healing or protection spells that can let you do more support type stuff also. So basically Abjuration is broken down into 2 main categories. It's elemental protections and it's healing. The elemental protections are really, really powerful because on the very low end of the scale, you have Elemental Ward, which offers you a small amount of protection against just about every elemental damage type in the game. But then you can choose to specialize into more advanced forms of protection against specific elements. So maybe you want to focus on something like fire. And so you can learn protection from fire, then you can learn greater protection from fire, followed by circle of protection from fire. Or, you could pick another type of elemental damage that you wanted to resist. So, if you're not looking to go into the elemental protection, you can look into healing, which is probably a bigger draw for Abjuration Magic, if I'm just being honest. Because most players are going to see the elemental protection as kind of something that's more niche, like it's nice to have but not essential. Whereas healing is something that will benefit you in the vast majority of your games. So you're probably only going to see the elemental protections from dedicated abjurers, while the dabblers are definitely going to pick up the healing. I could be wrong on that, but just on my experience and what I've heard from people who've played the game. So with the healing magic, the first one you get is Healing Touch, which is a very basic healing spell. It lets you heal 1d8 hit points to a living creature that's within 1 yard. And because I've said in my video about the healer character, magical healing isn't all that common in Raven of the Scythe, so being able to instantly help your ally recover 1d8 hit points is a pretty big deal. And it only gets more impressive as you dive deeper into healing, with things like Greater Healing Touch, and then Persistent Healing, which it doesn't heal as much damage at once, but it has a duration where it heals you over time. And let's see. Then there is... yeah. I knew it was in here somewhere. I just couldn't remember the name. Healing Aura. It's an area of effect spell that lets you heal a bunch of people within an area. And these are all really nice things to have in a combat situation. In one of the games I ran, the persistent healing spell completely changed the course of how a combat was going, because the Abjurer was able to cast persistent healing on our tank, and then the tank was able to reliably stay up and active in the front lines while the rest of the party was really struggling against a high-level encounter. So, the healing is a given, the elemental protection is a given, but there are a few oddball spells within the School of Abjuration that are worth noting. Particularly Wall of Force. Lots of spell schools have some type of wall spell that lets you create a barrier, but none of them are as good as the one found in Abjuration, which is literally just a wall of magical energy. And while Evocation School has access to things like Wall of Fire, and Necromancy has a couple of variants on that, Wall of Force is the most powerful of the wall spells. There's also a spell called Purify, which allows the target to instantly recover from poison or sickness. And Pacify. This is a pretty weird spell that you cast it on a living creature, and that creature just becomes unable to make an attack. Now, if you ever attack the target, then the spell is ended. So it's not something where you can keep someone from attacking and then just wail on them for a while. But it is something if you want to stop something from attacking, so maybe you can get away, or maybe you want to take the opportunity to negotiate. And Magic Ward, it specifically grants you protection against spells and magical effect. You'll get a +4 bonus on any reaction check to resist spells. So there's a lot going on in Abjuration that may not be obvious to someone who just sees it as the healing protection spell school. But there are some really cool things here that a dedicated Abjurer can definitely take advantage of and definitely help the party with. I don't think that there is a party out there that couldn't benefit from an Abjurer being among them, but because of the nature of the school, it's not something that's going to be for everyone. So, what should you think about whenever you want to take Abjuration? The first thing is definitely going to be probably you're going to need some form of backup attack because you're not going to have offensive magic to help you. Now, if you want to, of course, you can maybe take a secondary school like Evocation, which would give you some offensive power to maybe keep enemies away from you so that you could focus on your healing and protection stuff. Maybe you want to be kind of a fighter mage type where, yeah, you're an Abjurer, but you also don't want to completely negate or neglect your weapons training. So you would also have a relatively high fight score compared to other wizards. And I'd say probably one of the last options that you would have would be taking Animal Companion. So that way when you're not healing, you have an Animal Companion that can do damage and maybe take some hits for you that you can then just help them recover like you could another party member. And this is something that I've actually seen an Abjurer in one of my games do very, very effectively. They had a they weren't extraordinarily skilled in it, but they did have a warhammer that they used as a melee weapon. But more importantly, they had a badger who was their animal companion. So the Abjurer themselves would kind of hang back. By this point, they had some higher level spells, so they didn't have to be right up on someone to heal them. And then they would use their badger to go in and do the actual damaging part. If you're in a big enough party, if you have enough tanks that can protect you, then these considerations aren't going to be as important. But if you're in a smaller group, you're definitely going to want to look into some way of protecting yourself. But with all that being said, that is the long and short of the School of Abjuration. Like I said, there's a lot of good things going on here, but it's not necessarily going to be for everyone. So just recognize that going into it, and if Abjuration seems like a school that you would be very interested in, or something you at least want to dabble in a little bit to provide some healing and protection support for your party, by all means, best of luck. And if you have ideas on how you could use Abjuration effectively, let me know in the comments below. If you want to get access to my videos early, you can at patreon.com, and I'll put a link in the description for that. And also, of course, Raven of the Scythe is available at drivethroughrpg.com. There'll be a link in the description for that as well. Thank you very much for watching my videos, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks.